Hi, Alex. How are you doing today?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you very much for joining. I really appreciate your time.
No problems.
And the reason I organized this catch-up and asked you to join is because I really want to hear more about your product. And I believe that there is people in my network who will be also interested in such product. And before we start, could you please tell me what is the correct pronunciation for your company name?
Yes, so our formal name is Nanoputian IO. So the whole company name includes the .io.
Mm-hmm.
We affectionately refer to ourselves as Nano, but yeah, that's the full company name. We've been around for the last 6 years, roughly, and have really been sort of ramping up in the last 12 months with some new product offerings, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment. But the company has a rich history of working in sort of the cloud native application development space. And so we're based in Brisbane and have, it's a beautiful weather here. And we've got also an offshore development team as well who work with us on our projects as well.
I see. Yeah. Speaking about the beautiful weather, I can see the clouds behind you.
It is a bit cloudy today, I have to admit, but very nice temperature.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Sounds good. Is there any particular meaning under the name? I mean, that like Nana, yes, and the second part?
Yeah, so if you Google Nanoputian, you'll find these rather small humanoid-looking benzene ring-shaped chemical compounds, and so when you consider what Nano is all about, we're all about using serverless technologies, microservices, nano services built on currently built predominantly on AWS infrastructure, and so it was quite fitting when the founder of our business was sitting around having some wine one day and looking at, well, thinking about what you might name this company. Yeah, there was just a lot of overlap there with, small scale everything, make it all smaller and smaller, divide it up into smaller and smaller bits, and eventually you come up with all of these sort of assembled microservices that can do a lot of different things and act as a whole. And yeah, so that's originally where Nano came from.
Sounds good. Yeah, sounds quite advanced.
Yeah, there's some thinking involved, and I hear from the stories quite a lot of alcohol too.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So last time we had a chat, we were speaking about some integration product you're developing, and
yes.
Could you please tell me more about that?
Absolutely. So look, it's probably worth maybe taking a step back first before talking about the actual implementations of what we've been doing. So my background, and I'll talk about this because it probably gives context for some of the people who watch this video.
Yes, please.
I've spent the last few years working client side, helping customers as a CDO to identify, what is the digital strategy and what are the transformations that businesses need to put in place in order to drive their business forward and achieve better growth and so forth. And part of that revolves around better intelligence and better decision making. But one of the core limiting things for me has been sort of seeing how the industry actually comes together to provide the insights that you need. And the technology solutions that are out there are just slightly lacking in, well, not slightly, but clearly lacking in many areas around what's needed in order for a range of different businesses. Like, so if you're an enterprise grade customer, typically those larger organizations have big budgets and they can spend that money on expensive systems and integrations and BI and so forth. And then as you get down towards kind of the SME space, it's quite difficult to get your systems integrated because there can be a significant cost there. So when I joined Nano, we had to think about what the business has been doing to date, and particularly in the space of integrations, recognize that there's actually a lot of duplicated effort between projects, And so what we wanted to do is actually build a platform which competes with the major large-scale enterprise solutions like MuleSoft and Boomi and TIBCO Scribe and so forth to achieve integrations, but then also looks to solve some real problems around business intelligence and other things. And so we've, over the last year, built and deployed into production for a number of different customers, our version of an integration platform. But what's different from how we've designed it to how, the designs of platforms you see today. So I think we've recognized that every integration ultimately ends up requiring some software be developed.
Yep.
But what you don't want to do is have to deal with all of the the intricacies of the in out of information, and the data exchange with this platform and then with that platform and all these different platforms that you might have to connect to. So we took it back to basics and said, well, there's only a certain number of ways that, today that we can get data out of platforms, and we built modules in our solution to allow sort of generic approaches to getting data out. And then every platform that we interface with ultimately ends up having some slight variant on what is a standard sort of IO process, right? And so we've got a hierarchy of kind of modular design hierarchy that allows us to say this particular platform, whether it's SAP, S4HANA, or whether it's Xero or MyOb, or on that entire scale, they all make use of authentication protocols, and they just do it slightly differently. And so that also allowed us to recognize that sometimes platforms we need to get data from and into don't even have APIs to access. And so we need, we've created solutions that would allow us to connect to systems that quite simply wouldn't have been able to be connected to previously in a very simple way. And so we built this platform around the idea that developers will use the platform, not a citizen coder. And so if you are a JavaScript developer, you'd be very happy right now to know that as this platform evolves and we start opening it up to external parties, it is as simple as creating or consuming an SDK. It's as simple as writing a piece of code where all of the modular functionality that Nano has created is available through an SDK, allowing you to do some very powerful things like getting data in and out of any platform on the planet with a single line of code.
So what, Alex, sorry, so what you want to say that I could take the SDK and integrate it with my current solution and use
no, it's very much an independent solution. So the platform takes care of things like scheduling integration jobs to run, whether it's via cron or some other time schedule. It takes into account event-driven integrations. So for example, when customers are sending files to a particular destination, those files are being automatically processed as they arrive in those destinations. It's driven by, it could be driven by an API call or a webhook otherwise. So to trigger a job, but then the key thing being that job is defined by you in code. And so the way that we've constructed the platform is such that you can see the developer actually never even has to worry about the authentication protocols with that end system. All they need to worry about is creating a single line of code that says, I would like to get data from this URL from that platform. Here's a link to or an ID for a credential that's stored in the Nano system. So the user experience, here's my credentials, but not, but actually, and this is where security comes into play, is that we actually don't need to even, the developer doesn't even need to have the credential themselves. They can have a customer create their credentials. Those credentials can be stored in the system securely, both in transit and at rest, and then used by the system and called on their behalf, much like If you've seen some integrations with Jira and other platforms, you might be asked to log in with your Active Directory credentials, for example, in order to allow Jira to access some information about you for single sign-on and things like that.
Yep.
We have similar processes for collecting the actual credential, protecting those credentials, and then allowing a developer who is within the permission boundaries that they have to use that credential as part of a job. And there's a lot of stuff that happens in the background to make sure that the credential belongs to the client, and that nothing nefarious is happening in the background. But the huge power of the platform actually is that you just completely obviate the pains that are there around connecting to this system. And so a real world example for me is that I've been a BI developer for many years, and I've always struggled with trying to get data out of systems like anything behind a OAuth2 type authentication. Platforms like Power BI, for instance, don't do that out of the box unless it's Active Directory itself. So, so what do you do when you want to get your data out of zero? You can't. You have to go into the realms of creating custom connectors, and gets quite messy very quickly. So what if you could just replace, what if a platform could go and get that information on your behalf and give it to you using an authentication protocol that you can actually consume? So in that example, you could create a zero credential into zero.com, for instance, and then you could hit any one of the Zero API paths that you wanted to get data from directly from Power BI, because you have an API key that you can use to access that credential. So it's still secure. It's a different method of security, and then you also have control over who has access to those keys, and likewise how they're used.
Yeah, that's a good thing about the security, because also when we do the integration projects, a lot of our clients, they're concerned about how we store the credentials, how we transfer the data, how we access the data. So yeah, the security is quite important. You also mentioned that there is quite let's say few applications you can, not few, maybe many applications you can connect to. So I hear about the Zero, I hear about the SAP. From your website, I also saw that you're doing the Salesforce. How many?
Anything with an API.
Anything with, so it's just like out of the box, or you need to do?
No, so it depends on the platform. So there's generic connectors that can connect to any kind of API key based authenticated platform. And then there's custom connectors that are built for platforms that do slightly weird things. So for instance, there are payroll solutions on the market that will give you an API key, but you're required to use that API key as part of a basic auth. And so rather than you having to figure out how to code all of that up yourself, the platform's already got a custom module that will handle that for you. And in the example of SAP, for instance, that is a custom module, because there's a how that information exchange occurs requires, for instance, there being some solution, part of the solution is actually deployed into the customer environment. But to be honest, the long-term view, if you jump onto platforms like Zapier, for example, and you see that they've got these big long lists of all these systems they connect to, the reality is it only takes, I don't know, an hour to deploy our platform is also deployed as through infrastructure as code. So for us to deploy a change to the platform, introducing a brand new module would take us as little as an hour to have that developed and deployed. And so where we see similar patterns in how platforms use those different authentication protocols, we can just pick up something we've done before, deploy a new update. There you go. There's a brand new module. It's out the same day, and takes care of and it takes care of the intricacies of how we connect with that. with that particular solution.
So you are developing the custom models, or can, for example, your client develop the custom model and implement that? Or
oh, totally. So through the utilities available, the customer or the developer in this case could make use of HTTP web requests through the platform, constructed the way that they want to construct them. But what we're all about is increasing the efficiency of your coding experience, right? So why, for example, why would you want to do that when all you need to do, and so keep in mind that the challenge associated with that is, well, now how do you manage that credential? Because this is like a custom solution, right? So what we want to do is maintain the security. We don't want you putting your API key in code. I mean, some people will do that at some point. We really would prefer you not to. But if you make use of the platform, what it actually allows you to do is create jobs that are defined around those credentials without you knowing what the credential is, and also then allowing over time, if, for example, that key got updated, you don't have to go and redeploy. You just go into the UI and save a new, or update your credential in the UI. Your job keeps running, right? So you don't need to go and do another deployment. It's just there. So we're all about, as I said, the platform's built for developers, and it's essentially it's the same kind of development experience you might have working with any SDK that you might deal with on the planet. It's all written in JavaScript, so you do something like don't quote me on this, I'm not the developer, but you might do something like let node equal requires let nano equals require nano, and you get the full library of connectivity, and you can use your own IDE to build out your own code, drag and drop that into the platform, and then just click run. Just test it right there and then. You'll get debugging as part of that. So the experience is built to help the developer and allow that, and actually prevent. What we don't want to be is a platform where the UI that we create gets in the way of solving the customer's problem. So by enabling you to just write code and using the documented SDK, for example, you can avoid having some fancy UI where you drag and drop things and connect things, and then you got to have a specialist who knows how to deal with that piece of software. You can just find a JavaScript developer now who can intuitively understand that, oh, I'm writing some code here and I can do some data transformations and I can do whatever I want as part of the platform.
I see. Yeah, thank you. So telling about that, the platform is aiming to the developers. What if there's a business, let's say it's some medium business who needs some integration, who likes your product, but they don't have the developers? So do they need to hire, or so you provide this service?
Yeah, we'll do it for you. Yeah, we do. We definitely do. So we actually think of really there's 3 channels to market for the product we've got. In the current solution where we're right now, early in this stage, we're building solutions for our customers using our own platform. We are the developer, and we're also the platform provider. We're in the stage now, moving to, in the next month or so, opening up with key partners, and so allowing organizations who have developers that want to white label a version of our platform, for instance, and have their own team building solutions for their customers. The way that we deploy our solution is, as I said, infrastructure as code. So standing up a brand new instance of our platform for a customer with their logo and whatever, it's easy to do too. And then the third channel really is in kind of the do-it-yourself space, where we're towards the I think it would be Q3 to Q4 this year. We'll be opening up to the broader public, and that broader public can then create their own account, build their own integrations using their own credentials, or even still use the platform as a tool for building integrations for their customers, but opening it up a little bit more broader. And we're doing that deliberately, I think, because what we really want to be able to do is support those early adopters of the platform through some hands-on training and other things to kind of get them up to speed. And also, we don't know, we're developers ourselves, so we know all the pains we've experienced writing integrations using our own platform, and the platform continues to evolve. But, you know, as we bring more and more people on board the platform, we want to make sure that we're listening to the feedback that we're getting from developers around how we can best, you know, direct the future of the product.
Sounds good. Sounds good. That's like you're quite supportive in these terms.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think when you're early in the game like we are, I think you really have to support anyone who wants to take the risk and give your product a try. So yeah, absolutely.
Another question, so like quite like in the another direction, let's say. Speaking about your competitors, what is your main advantage?
Well,
yeah,
aside from the fact that we get out of the way, I think I've mentioned a few already.
Yeah.
Look, if you look at some of the iPaaS solutions, so for those who don't know, iPaaS is an integration platform as a solution. A lot of them are, if you listen to the marketing today, a lot of them will tell you that they're built for a citizen coder. The idea that anyone off the street, wherever in the business, can just pick this thing up, drag a few things onto the page, connect them up, and there you go, there's an integration. The reality is far from that. In fact, many of the organizations we've worked with have quickly recognized that they don't actually have the in-house capability to do this. Or if they do, that capability is extremely niche and quite costly. And even so, ultimately, the platform typically is very opinionated about how you do things. And so your solution becomes very constrained. And then as a final sort of byproduct of all of that is you typically get very poor feedback from the platform about you know, where bugs are occurring and how they're occurring and so forth. So recognizing all of that, we're building an experience that is just developer centric, because integrations are built by developers. So if we actually go back to the basics, what does a developer want to do? They want to write the code. They want to comment the code. They want to get immediate feedback about the you know, the effectiveness of the work that they've just done. And they don't want to spend a lot of their time learning you know, a bunch of different constructs that continually change over time as that platform realizes, oh, I've got to change the UI, I've got to do these, you know, add this extra functionality. So they're already specialists at JavaScript, so just let them get in and do it, for instance. So yeah, I think in terms of the competitors, they're taking a particular route where they you know, they live in the low touch land where they want to have very little contact with the client at all. I think we live in the land sort of in the middle where we want to help consumers to build their own integrations. And actually, ultimately, what I see, you know, if you think about point-to-point integrations between systems, the challenge there is just if you have 10 systems, you have 2 to the 10 integrations you need to build. There's too many. So how do we put this in? How do we democratize integrations? The answer for me is have a solution where people can actually share their code base. Like there's nothing stopping, and in fact, we will be positively, hopefully, influencing the community to jump on to Stack Overflow and actually share their, you know, what they've created between, you know, an integration between, say, a Bamboo HR and a KeyPay into, you know, a payroll integration. Sharing that code helps the community, you know, learn, and more importantly, helps the customer at the end to not have to reinvent the wheel every time someone does something.
Yeah, I reckon that it's your competitors do that through the plugins mostly, but not through the shared code. Yeah, that sounds good. So from what I hear, that's a flexibility for the developers. They could do whatever
100%.
they like. The huge support from your team, from your organization. Shareable code and free code,
Yeah.
perhaps, probably.
Oh,
May only
that's up
start
to the
overflow.
developer. If they want to share it,
And
we'll be definitely supporting that.
I reckon that maybe because we discussed that before, and I reckon that you're not mentioning that, it's a huge advantage as well, is probably the pricing you didn't mention.
Oh,
Or I
absolutely.
missed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So underpinning everything that we've created is probably, before I talk about the pricing, I'll talk about the why first. So as I mentioned, Nano as a business is entirely focused around sort of microservices, microarchitectures built on cloud native solutions. And what that actually means is 100% serverless. So everything we build for our customers. So we build, we're also in the business of doing SaaS modernization. So we're helping customers modernize their existing or their legacy web applications and bringing that into the cloud native space. So we're doing that as a service, as a separate service stream. But when you're committed to doing everything completely servicely, it actually opens up a whole new way of thinking and a whole new price point for operating your infrastructure. So to give you an example, our platform, from an operational point of view, cost us so little to operate that the first thing that we saw was an opportunity to pass on significant savings to customers through dramatically reduced licensing and or maintenance costs. And at the moment, we're actually not even, the customers we have in our platform aren't even paying a license. They pay a very small contribution to the maintenance of the platform. So rather than paying thousands of dollars a month or tens of thousands of dollars a month for a platform, in some cases at the high end of town, we're down in sort of hundreds of dollars a month in that range, where you have a platform that in which you can build as many integrations as you want, unconstrained, and can operate those integrations. Fair use policy obviously applies, but as much as you want, and not have your cost base change from month to month, because we're not currently even considering a consumption-based model. So what does that mean? We want you to get the benefit of the platform and also benefit from the cost savings in the OpEx, because with serverless, the maintenance is extremely minimal. There's no patching and all that stuff. We've deployed our platform into customers who are in the SAP space, where their typical monthly bill would have, for existing integration solutions, would have been somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 a month. Yeah. And now they're paying somewhere in the order of hundreds a month. So there's like a 98% cost saving to the customer for that particular customer. So the cost saving is huge, and the development cost, when you think about it, is actually a lot less too, because the platform already exists. It already handles 80 to 90% of all of the things that you need to do. And by the way, if it doesn't, let us know, because we're rapidly building out more and more functionality. And then it's up to your creativity as to how you solve the problem of, I need to move this bit of data from here to here, right? Like, what do I need to do in the middle? And I could be getting data from here and here and here and here, and doing big number crunching in the middle before I go and stick stuff somewhere else, or store it, or notify someone of our email, or whatever it might be. So yeah, the cost savings are quite considerable. The technology is also, that serverless technology is also quite important, because it allows us to scale from 0 users a month to 40 million users a month without us even having to lift a finger. It allows us to, for example, handle 10,000 concurrent jobs, new jobs starting every second, without lifting a finger. And so you scale from 0 to however much resources AWS wants to give us, as quickly as as quickly as the user needs it.
So you're saying that there's like no limitations on the amount of the data transferred, requests. So is there like a minimum or maximum numbers or no limits? You can start as little as
Not
one
currently.
request a day.
No, not currently. We don't have any limit on the number of requests.
Awesome.
That said, it's important to note that the platforms you connect with, they do. So for instance, if you are trying to connect with Business Central Dynamics, they will allow you to have 5 concurrent API calls happening at the same time. They will allow you to queue additionally queue up to 95. So there will always be bottlenecks that are provided by the systems that you connect to. And you just think about it, it's Node.js, right? And you're doing HTTP calls. You could just put them all asynchronously and say, hey, happy day. But that platform will probably come back and say, no, too many calls, and start rejecting some of them. So you can handle that through different techniques in how you hit those endpoints. But from our side, we're unconstrained. We can go as hard and as fast as you want to go.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Currently, the only limit we have, I think, is around the processing time. So we do currently limit for smaller customers their execution time to 15 minutes per integration. But we've already started looking at, for other customers who need a bit more, how we do that. And then, the sky's the world, really. There's really no limit on what the platform can do.
Awesome. Look, and the last question I'd like to ask here, because that sounds awesome. Honestly, like I'd love to try that one. And the question is actually regarding that one. If someone wants to try your platform, your product, how would that?
How do they get started?
Possible?
Contact me. We will start a conversation to begin with. As I said, we're opening this up to partners in the first instance in Q2 this year. So if you would like to be on the short list of some of the first early adopters, I guarantee it'll be worth your while. And you can contact us at contact@nanoputian.io and or via LinkedIn. However you want to get in contact, just contact me directly, and we'll start that conversation.
Sounds good. All the contacts will be provided, and there will be a link on your profile on LinkedIn, Alex.
Awesome.
And the company details as well. Thank you very much for your time. That was
Thank you.
Awesome.
Appreciate it. And I look forward
inspiring.
to speaking to you more and also meeting some of your followers as well.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Have a great day. Thank you very much again. And see you.
Thank you, Dennis.
See you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.